Good afternoon from the Pittsburgh area of Western Pennsylvania. I'm going to do a video now on specific problems that occur with the 70's Rockolas, and I had two recent service calls that dealt with this, and I thought I would pass it on how to evaluate and remedy this problems. The first is slow turntable speed. We'll go over what you need to do to diagnose and fix this. It's fairly straightforward. And then I had a customer with a much more difficult problem that had frustrated him, and he called me, and we went over and tried to fix a read-out arm problem that his right-in circuit, actually, which is the more complicated, was working fine. It would select the proper pin, and the magazine motor and the plate control relay started, and the readout arm went for that pin but went right past it. So we saw a little spark there when it hit the pin, but it didn't stop, and it didn't start the record transfer, and just spun forever. So that was a big problem, and there were four components we had to go over, and I wanted to share that because it really it's educational, and it was a big problem, and it's one that you probably should be familiar with, because even if you don't have that exact problem, you need to know what components are in the readout circuit. So let's start with the turntable speed first, and then we'll go to the second one and finish up. Slow turntable speed will obviously affect the sound, and you'll pick it up when the RPMs are around 42, 43 instead of around 45. And in order to remedy this, there are multiple approaches. Now, since I have the platter in my hand, the first thing I do to confirm that slow turntable speed is to mark with a marker one spot on the platter, and then as it spins around on the turntable assembly, time it with your cell phone for 30 seconds and then double it, and that will confirm that, yeah, okay, you're at 42 RPMs, and so you got a problem then. And what I do then is start, since I have the platter here. This is not a particularly good platter, by the way. It has a disruption of its felt rim here, and you can see it will result in a record that'll wobble a bit, so that's not going to help your record speed either. But on the underside, however, you want to put some oil down the shaft here, and you want to put a little bit of spray WD-40 or something on the three ball bearings that are here. That will reduce friction in this area, cut down on noise, and help. Now, on the other hand, on the inside of the turntable platter rim here, where the rubber idler wheel has to make good contact, this has to be completely free of oil and grease. So just go around this with rubbing alcohol and make sure that is completely clean. And then I think that's sufficient now for talking about the platter. And of course, put some oil down in the well where the turntable is eventually platter is going to eventually sit. Now, as far as the assembly down here underneath the turntable platter, the first thing you're going to want to address would be these turntable grommets. There are three of them. 1, 2, 3. This one is completely missing. These get dry rotted and fragment, as this one has, and if they aren't replaced, two things happen. First, the turntable motor actually falls down. These are needed to keep the turntable motor up and up against the idler wheel in the 45 RPM area, which is a little bit wider here. By the way, the diameter or the circumference of the primary shaft determines speed. So 45 RPM would have the wider portion of the turntable motor shaft. The 33, the slower speed, is on top. You don't want to deal with the 33 most of the time. You want to be sure your turntable motor abuts the idler wheel at the 45 RPM area, which is a thicker area. And to do that, you got to replace these three grommets. And once you do that, then at least the motor will sit up flush against the idler wheel, and have good contact. Now, once you've done that, you want to be sure the idler wheel is also free of all grease. So you wipe around the outside of it carefully with alcohol or some substance to completely make it as clingy as possible to the inside of the turntable platter when it comes down. Now you do want to oil a little bit way down at the bottom of the shaft where it enters the motor, and you want to just a tiny drop of oil here. Don't get any out here, but right here will help have the idler wheel move as freely as possible. There should be a couple fiber washers above and below, by the way, that E-ring. And then the last thing, this spring here has to have good tension, because when you put the turntable platter down, you're going to push in on the idler wheel, and then it has to to push in, but then it has to bounce back out so it abuts the inside of the turntable platter. So be sure this spring is nice and tight. You want to see it. This is the action you want to see, and if you have that, you should be good. Okay, so you do that. You put your turntable platter back on. You've cleaned everything, new grommets, and you still have slow turntable speed. So what do you do next? I often at this point examine the original idler wheel. I take it off. There's just a clip there and the two fiber washers. Look at it to be sure there aren't any indentations, but it's usually sort of dried up over the years and is noisy and just doesn't have enough surface area for good friction to abut the inside of the turntable platter. So for 32 bucks, you get yourself a new one off of eBay. Note that this is wider. It's more surface area to contact the inside of the turntable platter, and this will probably solve your problem. Well, it's 32 bucks, and you put that in, 2 washers below, 2 washers above the E-clip, put that on, and then put your turntable platter back on, and you should be in business at that point. If you're not, then we go to the next step. So at this point, we're assuming that maybe we've got a turntable motor that's a little bit tired. We've done all the easy fixes, and we still have slow turntable speed. So a cheater move is to take a piece of heat shrink wrap and just cut a little piece of it off and put this over top of the turntable shaft here, right? Just put it down over top of the 45 RPM area, and then let it get a heat gun or hair dryer. Please take the rubber idler wheel, the new one that you just bought, off or out of the way. I don't want that to get burnt, but heat this till it shrinks over the 45 RPM area of the turntable motor shaft. That will, as we discussed before, increase the circumference or diameter of the shaft and will increase your RPMs by about 5 RPM a minute. Well, that may be too much. So then what you do, you can put the mechanism in scan mode, and while the turntable is rotating and you get this idler wheel off, put some 600 sandpaper up against this and try to thin it slightly. It's a trial and error process, but most of the time after you heat shrink it, the little piece of tubing will adhere there. If you can narrow it down a little bit with fine sanding, you can get to 45 RPMs. And honestly, that probably will last you a year or two before you need to do that again. Now, if that process is not helpful, if you do all that and you still, after 6 weeks, your turntable speed is back down to 43 RPMs, okay, you're going to have to spring for a new turntable motor, and then it's going to cost you 50 to 75 bucks. They do get tired over the years. I've had to replace 2 of them of the almost 50 machines I've worked on. So, I mean, it is a real problem. They don't go bad suddenly. They just sort of start to slow down. So that would be your final straw. And That's all I have to say on this issue. We're going to move on to the next problem, but if you want to post questions or feel free to do that on the YouTube forum. Thanks. We'll go on to the next problem. Now we're going to go on to a more difficult problem where the customer's write-in circuit selects your system was good, but the readout arm never selected the pin. So let's show you exactly what was happening here. We'll go up and make a selection. I'll make a selection near the top of the readout arm here. 1, 3, 4. And then the readout goes for it. It actually selected the pin right there. It's selected, as you can see, but the readout arm just keeps going around and going around and going around forever. It never recognizes or makes an electrical connection there. So I'm going to cancel the pin, and then of course it'll keep on going until it gets down to the home position and stop. So that's the problem we're dealing with, and let me show you the components that are in that circuit that need to be evaluated. First, you have the micro switches on the back. They're micro switch, particular number 1 and number 2. You obviously have the readout arm and the readout circuit board. You have the AB switch assembly here, which toggles up and down from the record side, and that's very important. And then you have that control box underneath, which is hard to see, but this is what it looks like, and we're going to deal with that in a minute. So those are the 4 components we're going to go over to figure out what's going on here with this failure of the readout arm. Just for the 454, 460, this problem refers to sequence 14 in the manual where the carriage trips the interlock relay. Well, that wasn't happening. And your 33 volts comes across, and I hope you can read some of the schematic, but look where it's going through, micro switch number 2. And then it's coming down here and it's going through that interlock trip coil in the control box. And then it's coming down here, micro switch 1. Micro switch 1 isn't doing anything at that point, but still the contact has to be clean. And then it goes over to the interlock trip coil, has to kick in. There's a resistor in the control box. These are the interlock switches, and then that goes through the roller, the AB switch, the selector pin is hitting that readout arm, and then it gets grounded and starts the whole process. Of course, the next sequence that actually happens, and that's what actually starts the gripper motor going. And once the gripper motor starts, the magazine motor is cut out as soon as the number 1 micro switch moves off its position. So that's the electrical issue. So let's see what we have to look at here with the individual components. So I went up to the customer's house with a replacement known good readout arm assembly. I had a known good control box assembly. I took a couple extra micro switches. I took a readout drum. Hopefully I wouldn't need that because broken wires in there are relatively rare. And then I took an AB switch assembly. This is the green plug, comes over with the wires that we're interested in and connects to the drum. And those wires go to the circuit board here. Now, as this sits on there, the circuit we want to look at and pay attention is these 2 wires here. This outer one is the homing wire, but these 2 are the green and the blue wires that go to the hit side pin, A pin, and the B pin, okay? Give electrical power there. So we must go over this whole assembly. I've shown you how to clean it before, and then make sure all the wires are, the wipers are even. Bend them all down in a uniform way. This one is a little bit uneven, so make sure all these guys are bent down so they make good connection with the circuit board. And then clean everything here, okay? And then clean every single pin here. It's a little more difficult to do in the machine, but do it. Wipe around at least with some alcohol or CRC or contact cleaner and get every one of them clean so they make a good electrical connection when this little guy comes around. This little nub in here, the hit and the non-hit side. and they are connected as shown here. So I did that. I put a new readout arm in, cleaned everything, and nothing good happened. So then I went to the micro switches on the back, and I made sure all the connections, the push-on connectors, sometimes these are really dirty. Like, for instance, this one hasn't been cleaned. I just took a, if you have a connector like that, please clean it. I mean, gee, that's very, very important. So I went back there, looked at them, nothing good happened. So then I went over to took out the selection control box, and I put in a known good one of mine. If you have your selection, I am so sorry, this is the control box, not the selection. This control box, the relay that is not kicking in is the trip relay, okay? This one is supposed to trip and move the connections over, and that's what starts the whole process. It wasn't happening. And if you're real savvy, you can simply take those 2 screws off of the top of this, take the cover off, let the 4 connections, 2 there and 2 there, remain, and then let it slide down where you can see it, and then see if that trip relay actually operates when it's supposed to, when the pin is hit. If it's not, then hey, you've got an issue here. Check the coil, check the connections from on the way in, which I did. I did check continuity of all the wires going from the AB switch over to the bank, and I came up negative. And then I went over and I looked at his AB switch. These are the 2 wires we're talking about here. There's a blue and a green one that go to those 2 circuits we're talking about right here. Those 2 have to get the power over in an uninterrupted way. So I checked continuity. It looked okay. I replaced the AB switch, his AB switch, with a known good one, and guess what? It worked, and he was happy. And what was the matter then? Well, I took this home, and this is the most difficult of all problems, okay? Man-made problems or errors. This is the correct wiring position. Well, someone had reversed these wires. They put the 2 wires that go to the cancel coils over here when they cleaned it, and these 2 wires went on the other side. And I didn't pick it up at the customer's house, but when I got home, I said, oh my gosh. So the moral of the story is you've got to check all these components and then look again at the wiring, because this component, actually the switch was good. When you pushed it in, it opened up the one contact and made a continuity with the other, and releasing it the opposite occurred. So it was good. It's just that we had a human error here that caused a lot of trouble. Well, I hope you got something out of this. The next video will probably go to resolving some other problems that have come up that will have common interest. So I hope to see you then. Till then, have a good day from Pittsburgh. Thank you.